Alright guys, here's the thing about slope, okay? When you learn slope, and I know many of you have already seen this, there's actually a lot of different ways to explain slopes. And let me start off by maybe a more practical way of explaining slope would be like driving your car up a hill, okay? Has varying steepness to that. I know truck drivers actually uh, like to talk about slope in terms of a percentage. So that's actually one way to talk about slope. You might be going down or up a mountain and you might see a sign that says 6% grade. That's one way of actually explaining slope. So I guess the point I'm making is it's not always what we're talking about today, which is change in y over change in x. Okay. So the first definition I want you to write down for slope is simply rise over run. So it's how much up or down you go divided by how far over you go. So rise over run, okay? So that means how much up you have to go or down, followed by how much over you have to go. The easiest way to think of slope is if you're going down and then over, it's going to have a negative slope. If you're going up and over, it's going to have a positive slope. Okay, the actual definition, which is not so much important right now as it is you knowing how to find the slope, but the actual definition is and I'm going to explain these triangles. Don't worry, I know it looks a little weird, but the triangle means change in. Okay, why do we use that? Because it's a Greek symbol, delta, and for some reason we just write it to mean change in.
Well, if you go up and over, it means it's positive.
If you go up and over from left to right, correct, then it has a positive slope.
And if you go down and over?
If you go down and over, it has a negative. And I'm going to draw some slopes for you guys in a second to show you 4 different types of slopes, okay? It can either be positive, negative, horizontal, which means 0, or vertical, which means undefined. So I'm going to show you all 4 of those.
Oh, I gotta write that down.
Okay. As you're writing it down, I was thinking about this last night because I like to hike a lot. Another way to think about slope is if you're going up a mountain, for example, how much elevation is increasing divided by how far, horizontally you're going. So like if you were hiking something like this, okay, it would have a steep slope because your elevation is going up a lot as you're going over a little. Okay, so if you were to take your change in elevation, let's say you went up, I know a place back home, it rises up 1,500 feet, and you hike about, I think it's about 1.5 miles. So you'd have to convert that to feet and figure out the slope. But anyways, that's another way of thinking about it. Obviously, the higher rise that you go, the steeper that hike is going to be. Okay, so the first example of slope would be a positive slope. However you want to write that on your paper. Okay, and notice we're going from left to right. I'm just going to put 2 points on here because that's kind of what we're doing today. But notice that you go up, okay, before you go over for a positive slope. So it's up and then over. Okay, and you could have a lot of different positive slopes. You could have another one that's really, really steep, almost vertical. Or you could have one that's almost horizontal, right? And that would be not quite as steep. Like it kind of goes back to the percent grade I was talking about. If you had a vertical line, that would be 100% grade. And if you had a horizontal, it would be 0. And anything in between would be a certain percentage of that. So 50% grade for if you were, climbing would be at a 45-degree angle. So again, there's a lot of different ways to talk about slope. We won't go over percent grade today. We're just going to talk about rise over run. All right, the next type of slope would be negative, and it would look like this. So the difference between negative and positive is you actually go down before you go over. And again, that's from left to right. So the best way to me, the best way to do these is always go from left to right. If you go from left to right, then you'll always go to the right to get to the point. The question is whether you go down or up, and that will tell you whether it's negative or positive. Okay? So we got positive, we got negative. The next type of slope is zero. I'll talk about undefined in a second. Zero slope is when you have a horizontal line. Now the reason it's zero is because what's your change? Let's just use the elevation. What would be your change in elevation here? None, right? So your change in y over change in x, really it doesn't even matter how far over you go, because you're not going, your change in y isn't anything. So 0 divided by anything is 0. So that's why that's zero slope. Just imagine just walking on a flat sidewalk, okay? You're not going up or down. Fourth one, I'll go back. Let's see, there we go. The fourth one is when you have a vertical line. Okay, it'd be like climbing up a cliff or something. And that one is going to be undefined. And here's why. You have no change in x. Okay, you have no horizontal change. You're going straight up or straight down. So therefore, sure, thanks. So if we do change in y over change in x, doesn't matter how far up or down you go. If you're dividing by 0, what do you guys know about dividing by 0? Can't do it, right? 0 doesn't fit into anything, and that's why a vertical line is undefined. Okay, I have seen it written this way. Okay, everybody knows what that symbol means. Infinite slope, and that's true, okay? I'm not going to argue with that, so we could either say infinite or undefined. But those are the 4 kinds of slopes, okay? Just to refresh, we got positive, we got negative, we got 0, and we got undefined or infinite slope. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first example. Okay, it's going to be positive. Now I'm going to teach you 5 simple steps, usually 4, but 5 simple steps in order to get the problem right every single time, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is plot 2 integer points. Now an integer just means it's not a decimal, that's all that means. So in other words, you're trying to find a place on the grid that works perfectly. There's more than one answer, okay? Can somebody tell me a point you can see on the graph that's right on the grid? In other words, where the green line touches a grid point. So just raise your hand and yes. 2, 3? Close, other way around. 3, 2. Okay? So right there, I missed it a little bit. But can everybody see that the graph touches 3, 2? Yes. -2, -2. Yes, great. I think that's it doesn't touch 0, 0. No, it doesn't. You want to find the point closest to that one, and I think he did actually. I think -2, 2 is the closest point that from 3, 2. So that's good. So that's the first step. I mean, it's pretty easy. You're just finding where the line crosses the grid or touches the grid. Okay. Next, we're going down, up, from left to right towards the right point. I know that's kind of like a weird wording, but basically let me show you what we mean. In other words, this is not going to be a perfect line. We're going to go up until we're level with that second point to the right. Okay? So that's all that step is doing. And I'll give you a second to copy that down. So since I went up, do you think it's going to be positive or negative? It's going to have a positive slope, yes. For step 2, for this method I'm teaching you, there's other methods, but to me it's the best way to do this is to always start at the left point. That way, once you go up or down, you know if it's negative or positive. Okay, there are other methods where you could start from the right point, but we're not going to go into that. Okay, so step 3 is we're going to go over to the right point. Okay, so once I get there, I'm going to draw a horizontal line to the point on the right. Okay? And if you want to count as you're going up and over, that might be helpful too. It's going to lead us to the next step. Record the slope. So the question is, how many units up did we go? You can actually count the grid. Okay, we went from -2 to -1, that's 1. Then up to 0, that's 2, 3. So we actually went 4 units up. We went from -2 to 2. And you can literally just count them. Or you could draw like some miniature hops or whatever. So how many units is it from -2 to 3 if we go over to the right this way? 5. So 5 grid lines total we went over. Well, we're right there now at what the slope is. So we can go ahead and record the slope. Remember, it's how much up you went divided by how much over you went. So the answer is going to be 4 over 5. That's going to be your slope. Now, if you guys want to write M, some of you might know, I don't know why we use M, but for some reason the letter M represents slope. You can write M equals 4 over 5. Yes. Now, step 5 might be useful if you want to take a look at that fraction. You want to make sure that fraction is simplified. So if the fraction was like 3 over 6, make sure you reduce that to 1 over 2. Just because it's simpler, right? That means you go up 1 unit every time you go over 2. In this case, we're going up 4 units for every 5. So this one's close to 1. This one's close to 45 degrees. All right. Okay, step 5 is to simplify the slope. So simplify the fraction. All right, example 2. Who wants to pick the first point on the graph? Yes. It's going to be negative. -2. No, not quite. It's got to be right on the grid. 2, -2. That works. Okay. So at 2, -2, it touches the grid. Is that what you're going to say? Yeah. Great. -4, 3. I know it's kind of hard to see on here, and it's even hard for me to get it right up there. But yeah, it touches the grid on those 2 points. So now that we know the steps, we're going to go up or down from left to right. So we're going to start at the left point, and then we're going to go over to the next point and record the slope. So this time I think we'll be able to count a little bit better. So we're going to start at the top point, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went down 5 units. So we can go ahead and record -5 right there. Okay? Pretty simple. Then now that we've got there, we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. Like that. Again, we're going from left to right, and we've already figured out the slope, which would be what? -5 over 6. So that's why I think if you start from left to right, you'll always know whether it's negative or positive. And again, you can write slope equals, or we can use the letter M, which also means slope. So this time we went down 5 and 6 units to the right. Step 5 is to simplify the slope. In other words, if you end up with a fraction that's not simplified, in this case you might have got -10 over 12, you would simplify that down to -5 over 6. Okay, let's find 2 more points for this one. It doesn't quite go through 0, 0, so that one ain't going to work. -1, yep. -1, -5. That's good. The next one is going to be 1, 4. And those are the 2 closest points that touch the grid. Okay? So we're going to start from left to right. So I'm going to start down here and go up 1, 2. Let's not use something that let's do this one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we had to go up 9 units. If you want to, you can put a plus sign there. And then over 2. So what do you think the slope is? 9 over 2. How much up or down you went over divided by, how much to the right you went. Now, you could make that a decimal, but to me, slope doesn't make a whole lot of sense as a decimal. To me, the fraction makes a whole lot more sense. Do I?
Alright, since this is easy, is it going to get a lot harder?
No,
It's not
it
gonna
won't.
get any harder.
He makes like these assignments look a lot easier.
That's there's 6.
All right, so we can go ahead and look right off the bat here.
One.
0 and 1. 6, -2 works. Is there anything closer though?
Yeah.
Four
-2,
-2, +2, yep. Or I'm going to go ahead and say
You can go all the way
2,
up.
0. Okay? Yep, 2, 0 is going to be easier to work with than a negative number usually. Now every point you guys just mentioned is not wrong, but just make sure it's going to be easier for you if you choose 2 points that are closer to each other. So we're going to start at the left point and we got to go down just 1 unit. So I'm going to record -1 there. And then how many units over do you have to go? 2. So therefore the slope would be -1 divided by 2.
Are we gonna have an assignment today?
Yes, but since we're going to be cut short, then you'll have time tomorrow to work on it. The next two are actually the easiest examples, I think, since we've already kind of gone over it. We will use the steps here, but you don't.
0.
Yes, you already know it's 0, but look, we'll go ahead and just plot 2 points here, just for the sake of example. The point of this one is you don't have to go down at all or up to get to the next point. So your change in y would be 0. Now technically, you are going 1 unit to the right, correct? So if you wanted to do the work, it would be 0 over 1, but that just equals 0. So that's your slope. So anytime you see a horizontal line, you know the slope is going to be 0. And the last example,
Infinity.
you can either write
Undefined.
infinity or undefined. And again, if we want to actually look at the change in y over the change in x and create 2 points, well, here's 1 point on the graph. Here's another point. Okay, the reality is you can go up 1 unit, right? So that'd be 1, but you don't go over any units, right? There is no change in x, so you'd have to put a 0. Okay, and that would be undefined, or if you want to, you can put infinity.